Welcome back. This is the final week of August, which means we're getting closer, guys, to the start of the new NHL season. On September 21st, preseason action will begin, and then the regular season begins overseas in the Global Series as Buffalo and New Jersey will face off in Prague on October 4th. Season officially begins in North America a few days later, and then we'll go back overseas on November 1st. With that, let's bring in our NHL Network insider, David Pagnotta. And David, earlier the show, we talked about the big trade over the weekend of Yaroslav Askarov. Take us behind the scenes of that a little bit more, though. How did this whole trade come about?
Yeah, well, look, the Sharks were one of the teams that expressed interest in Askarov going back to the draft. I mean, it was kind of known in and around the end of June, around the draft in Vegas, that the Nashville Predators were taking calls on him. Once everybody kind of understood that a Staros extension was coming, that he was going to be the guy, Askarov was going to be the guy that was going to be moved out. And there were a number of teams that started to approach the Nashville Predators and Barry Trotz about the availability and what the cost would be. And then things really escalated after it became public that Askarov wanted out and wanted a change of scenery, wanted an opportunity to become a number one elsewhere. Clearly, he wasn't going to have that in Nashville with Saros there. And how he performed in Milwaukee in the AHL kind of led him and his agent and his whole camp to believe that he would get that crack at the number one spot. Nashville got hot, Saros got his extension, and it changed here. But San Jose was in on him. Certainly from the get-go, they ended up winning things out. But there were other teams that were also part of that mix. Montreal, Colorado, Utah, Philadelphia, a few other teams that were poking around to see if they might be able to make something work. But the San Jose Sharks willing to give up a first-round pick, willing to give up a former first-round pick that they got from Vegas and David Edstrom. This was a solid package that the Predators wanted to get back. They wanted a first. They wanted a top prospect, an additional asset. They ultimately get that. And Askarov now gets the opportunity to solidify himself as a legit NHL goalie, and over the next couple of years, earn that number one role with the Sharks after that 2-year extension that he signed as well.
Yeah, and earlier this summer, another goalie was on the move north of the border as the Flames sent Jacob Markstrom east. The Flames have been very busy so far under GM Craig Conroy the last couple of seasons. Do you have any updates on their plans for the rest of this offseason?
Craig Conroy's phone lines are wide open. His door to his office is open. If you want to send him a fax, if you still do that, do it. He's willing to listen. You've got Nazem Kadri that they are willing to trade. Now, Naz has a no movement clause. My understanding is he would be willing to go a little bit more east, not necessarily back home to Toronto, but somewhere in that vicinity. In addition to him, Rasmus Andersson, they're willing to take calls still on Anderson. He has another year left on his contract, has some no-trade protection, but there's some belief within the Flames and within the National Hockey League that this might be his last season as a Calgary Flame, that the Flames will be seriously looking at moving him this season if something isn't done over the course of the summer. Mackenzie Weegar generated some interest over the summer as well. I believe St. Louis, before they went the direction of Philip Broberg, were kicking tires on that. I know around the draft there were some discussions, but Calgary willing to listen on Weegar as well. So right now, Calgary is kind of open. They're unofficially entertaining the whole thought process of a full-on rebuild. They haven't officially gone in that direction yet, but if they're willing to listen on Kadri and Anderson and Weegar and Huberdeau even, you've got to imagine that that rebuild session is not that far behind. So we're going to keep tabs on that, certainly, and everybody should, as the Calgary Flames pretty much open for business if they get the right packages in place.
Yeah, very interesting. And they've made big blockbuster deals even just a season ago, or a summer ago, I should say. So definitely worth keeping an eye on. We've also seen some RFAs re-sign lately, and even a couple of offer sheets that have thrown things completely out of whack. Jeremy Swayman, though, is really the biggest RFA name that's still out there. What is the latest with Swayman and the Bruins? Is there drama there at all?
I don't know. I wouldn't go that far. I think that, look, the conversations are ongoing. Jim Montgomery, their head coach, the other day or a few days ago, speaking that he's confident that they'll be able to get something done, and that Swayman will be at camp. Both sides seem, again, pretty positive that they're going to get there before camp in the next few weeks. Now it's just a matter of hunkering down and getting things done. There are a few other restricted free agents that are due for contracts as well. Detroit's got a few guys. Winnipeg has Cole Perfetti, and so on and so on. There are other players as well. Carolina with, as you see there, Seth Jarvis as well. I can give you a quick update on some of these guys. Like Seth Jarvis, for example, I believe they are pretty close to an 8-year extension. That seems to be word on the street, north of $7, perhaps even north of $7.5 million on an AAV. It sounds like they're pretty much right there with respect to a new extension for Seth Jarvis. So don't be surprised if we hear that coming in the next few days. Conversely, both Dawson Mercer and Lucas Raymond, not there yet. They're not close to an extension, but they are having ongoing discussions. I spoke with everybody on both sides of both of those players, excuse me. And yeah, they're not close, but there's no concern. There's no worry just yet. Another note on Detroit, I should add as well. Jonathan Berggren, also an RFA. They expect the deal done, either a 1-year contract or a short multi-year deal, but he's expected to be ready for camp. He's actually coming into Detroit over the weekend. So everything kind of points towards him locking in to a new deal. But a lot of it depends on what happens with Raymond and Seider as well. But everything looks cozy on that front. And as I said, Seth Jarvis, 8-year extension with Carolina looks likely in the coming days.
And with Swayman, I mean, it seems like he's got a lot of leverage because he's the guy now in Boston.
Yeah, well, absolutely. He's the main guy with Ullmark now in Ottawa. I mean, it's Swayman's net wholeheartedly. So now it comes down to, if you are going the 8-year extension route, are you looking at numbers similar to what Saros got? Are you pushing towards something in the direction of Ilya Sorokin? You going over 8? Like, it really depends on what direction they want to take here with the Boston Bruins. But it sounds like the Bruins and Swayman are both set on an 8-year extension. It just comes down to what type of numbers it ultimately comes down to. There's the bonus structure, there's no trade protection. All of those elements come into play, and all of those provide some type of leverage on one side versus the other. But Swayman definitely poised to take over the #1 role with the Boston Bruins. He'll also be in line for Four Nations, for the Olympics in another year. Yeah. You know he's going to want to continue to bolster those numbers even more so than what he performed at last season. So, again, a few weeks away. Both sides seem confident that he'll be ready for camp. It's just a matter of getting everything kind of organized and crossing the T's and dotting the I's.
All right. Well, we'll look out for news on that front. Thanks so much for all the insight, and enjoy what's left of your summer.
You got it. Thanks so much, Jamie.